So this is what we're making. A bezel set, irregularly shaped, natural piece of turquoise. With this nugget, I'm just going to leave the natural features. I am going to flatten the bottom a little bit just to make it a little easier to set. And this is untreated turquoise, and it's usually fairly soft. Now I've got 180 grit wet or dry sandpaper, and I'm just going to sand the back. And you can see how quickly that comes down. So I'm just going to go until it's reasonably flat, and then I'm going to make a bezel just to surround the natural shape. So I have my back sanded flat. It's almost everywhere except this one little spot here, and that's enough. Now, if we sit it on the table and have a look, we can see that on 3 sides of this, our bezel is going to fold in and capture the stone. Even on the 4th side, a third of the stone will be captured. Part of it won't, but it doesn't really matter because enough of the bezel will be holding it. And this side will just be decoration, basically. Now, we have to figure out the height of our bezel that's going to work for most of this, and it looks like three and a half millimeters is going to be pretty good. So you can see we're using the depth part of our calipers. Yeah, 3.5, so make it 3.7 so that I can sand it back a little bit. We're going to use fine silver and anneal it, and then just wrap it around our stone to get a correct fit. So when I buy my fine silver, I buy it by the sheet. This is 0.5 thick, and that's what I use for most of my bezels. So I've got my calipers set at 3.7, and I've just scribed a line to show me where to cut it, and I'll cut it with the shear. So you can see cutting it with the shear, it gives a bit of a curl, no drama. We'll anneal it, and it'll be so soft we'll just be able to straighten it out with our fingers. So whatever torch you're using, and pretty much any torch, will have enough heat to anneal this. So we just want to bring this to a dull red. Which is there. Quench it in water. And now it'll be dead soft and easy to form. You can see that it's so soft that just pulling it, I can actually straighten it out quite easily. Now we're just going to wrap this around our stone, and what we want is for our join to be in a spot where it's easy to clean up. So I'll pick that spot, and we're just going to wrap that tightly. Push it against the stone with your fingernails. Let's see if I can get it so you can actually see. And all of the little ins and outs and imperfections, you want the stone to fit nice and tight around. So you can see in here. So do that all the way around, make sure it fits correctly. And then where it overlaps, we'll cut it. So take your time with this, because we want it to fit really nicely. I'm happy with that. We put a little texture mark where we need to cut it. And we'll just use the shears. Make sure you have a nice sharp set of shears. Spread it just a little to make sure that you don't catch the metal from the other side. Back around your stone, make sure it's absolutely correct. Just a hair. It helps if you put it on correctly. Perfect. So now we'll bring the ends together and solder it. And because it's so soft and easily formed, you can just push that together with your fingers and make sure it's all lined up. So I have the join on top, and we're going to flux it. So just a small amount of flux, top and bottom, and a small piece of hard solder. Place it on the join with your flux brush. So neutral flame, dry out your flux, make sure the solder stays in place, and as long as the solder is touching both sides of the metal, it'll be fine. So flux is dry, gone clear, and the solder flowed. Now it didn't flow all the way across, and what you can do is you can tease it across using your solder pick. So once the solder flows, you can just touch it and drag it to the other side. You have to be fairly quick, otherwise you'll melt your bezel. So I'm happy with that. We'll quench it in water, put it back over our stone just to check that it's correct, and then solder it to a base. I've pushed this back over my stone, and you can see by looking at the back that it fits all of the little imperfections. So now if we just gently lift that off the stone, then we can solder it to our base, and we know that it's the correct shape. So we just pop that out. Before we solder this to our base, we need to make sure that it's nice and flat. And I just looked, and there's a little imperfection here on the bottom I need to get out. So I'm using 400 grade wet or dry sandpaper on my bench, and I'm just going to sand this turning it from time to time so that I'm sanding an equal amount everywhere. And then you can just put it on your bench plate, have a look, make sure it's nice and flat, because if there are any gaps, it won't solder. Just a little more. Take your time with this stuff, never hurry. Just take the amount of time it takes, and that way you'll have a really nice jewel when you're done, when you're finished. Now, when you get it so it's nice and flat, which it is now, put it back over your stone to make sure that you haven't deformed it while you've been sanding the bottom. It was slightly deformed. And go back around to make sure that the bezel goes in all of the little imperfections. It's especially critical at the base, because once it's soldered, you're not going to be able to move it. So slip that off your stone, put it on your base, and solder it now.